go back to our whole thing. So, Willie, as you know, golfing's my thing. I won the 1987 Masters.
Yeah.
You, Nobel Prize for cold fusion.
Yeah.
And what was that?
It was a shared award, but I was the headliner.
You were the headliner, exactly. But you know what Donald Trump does? You know what he's best at doing?
Oh, yeah.
Guy makes deals.
Deals. That's what he does. You will like this guy president of the United States.
I thought you were going to say spins conspiracy theories.
Well, he's doing that too.
Yeah.
But, well, he's doing deals. It's like Eddie Murphy at the end of Trading Places. Oh, he's making deals. I'm doing deals. Busy. I'm making new deals. Right? That's what Donald Trump does. He makes deals. He assures us, elect me, I'm going to make the greatest deals. And nobody can do this but me.
Wait, he wrote a book, right, that was called...
The Art of the Deal. Art of the Deal. Art of the Deal. So this so this has been like his brand, Willie, right?
Yeah. Well,
how's that working for him?
Well, yesterday not so well. He said a couple of years ago that he gets his kicks from making deals. It's what he does. It's what he does. So
the deal.
With just 9 days left to fund the government, President Trump yesterday found himself at the negotiation table sitting next to empty chairs. It all started, as most things do, with this president with a tweet. Just before his scheduled bipartisan meeting with congressional leaders, Trump tweeted this, quote, meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open and working.
Wait, can I ask you a quick question? This guy went to Wharton, right? That's what he claims, right? Can you put the tweet up again? Do they teach you at Wharton to put Chuck and Nancy, to put names in quotation marks?
Interesting.
No, why would you do? He doesn't know how to even write, and he's always saying he's the smartest guy.
Every time you see Chuck and Nancy, don't you sort of think Sid and Nancy?
I do think Sid and Nancy.
That's kind of always, especially in the quotes.
Also,
like
kind of Jack and Diane.
Yeah.
There's sort of a Mellencamp feel to that. Yeah. But he really, you look at his, it's not really.
He's trying to make that a thing, Chuck and Nancy, instead of calling them Schumer and Pelosi.
I think
Chuck
he feels like he coined it. I feels like he coined it.
Right.
That's like an assertion of authorship. This is my coinage.
Right.
Chuck and Nancy.
And
that's why he puts the quotes around it.
Boy, that sure is good.
Yeah.
And they're
I didn't know that Ivy
entity.
League degree didn't go to waste.
So the problem with all this, that tweet is that they want, he writes, illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked. They're weak on crime and want substantially raised taxes. I don't see a deal. That's the end of the tweet from President Trump. So moments later, Schumer and Pelosi pulled out of the meeting.
We had hoped to make progress with the administration on these issues in a meeting this afternoon. Unfortunately, this morning, instead of leading, the president tweeted a blatantly inaccurate statement and then concluded, I don't see a deal. Given that the president doesn't see a deal between Democrats and the White House, Leader Pelosi and I believe the best path forward is to continue negotiating with our Republican counterparts in Congress instead. We would like to sit down right away. We'll be happy to sit down with the Republican leadership, as we did 6 months ago, and we got this done without the president being involved.
So House Speaker Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell issued a statement before the meeting trying to coax their Democratic counterparts still to come to the meeting. They wrote, we have important work to do, and Democratic leaders have continually found new excuses not to meet with the administration to discuss these issues. They went on, Democrats are putting government operations, particularly resources for our men and women on the battlefield, at great risk by pulling these antics. But when the meeting took place, there was President Trump with two empty chairs, one on either side.
I can bring people together.
One empty chair for Pelosi, one empty chair for Schumer sitting beside him.
Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did not show up for our meeting today. I'm not really that surprised. We have a lot of differences. So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk.
Do you believe there will be a government shutdown, Mr. President? And would you blame Democrats if that happens? Would you blame
If that happens, I would absolutely blame the Democrats. If it happens, it's going to be over illegals pouring into the country, crime pouring into the country, no border wall, which everybody wants. I got elected partially because of a border wall. You look at the military, we want strong funding for the military. They don't. So many things. As an example, they want high taxes. We want cut taxes.
The president.
Wait, hold on. He wants cut taxes. Come on. There were so many inaccuracies and falsehoods in that, Mike Barnacle. They want illegals coming over the border. By the way, illegals? That's what? Okay. Yeah. And he says everybody wants the border wall. No, they don't. It's like 2/3 of Americans are against that idea. I think most Republicans are now against that idea. He's just spewing off. And one other thing, too. I don't know if the president knows this or not. I don't know how much of a grasp of reality he has right now. But when he says he's going to blame Democrats for a government shutdown, Mike, do you think somebody in his White House could tell him the Republicans own the executive branch, the Republicans own the legislative branch, the House and the Senate, and for the most part, they own the judiciary. They own Washington, D.C. How in the world can he blame Democrats if the government shuts down because he's being petulant with his early morning tweets?
Well, first of all, he has created his own universe, and he believes everything that he says that is a part of his own universe. I mean, this country deserves so much better than what we're witnessing. I mean, we were about to see a monstrous tax bill, first real tax bill in 31 years. It's going to change the entire tax structure. It's going to affect every American. It was introduced, what, 4 or 5 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. How many public hearings have they had? Nobody knows what's in this tax bill, Joe. Nobody knows the long-term impact of this tax bill.
Second verse, same as first. I mean, that's what they've been doing all year, Willie.
And by the way, the president predicted that yesterday's missile launch by North Korea would change the Democrats' minds, but Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi reacted on Twitter, writing, quote, Donald Trump knows that his verbal abuse will no longer be tolerated. His empty chair photo op showed he's more interested in stunts than in addressing the needs of the American people. Poor Ryan and McConnell relegated to props. Sad. That's from Nancy Pelosi.
So sad.
A little mockery there.
Julie Pace, let's go back to the beginning of this exchange. What exactly did the president, if anything, let's give him the benefit of the doubt for a minute and assume there was some kind of a strategy. What did he expect to happen with that tweet insulting them before he came to the Capitol Hill?
Well, I think what he actually expected is that it would almost be a throwaway tweet, something that he could put out there. It would rally his base. You have to remember when Chuck and Nancy get in a room with the president, he actually likes having them there. That's why they reached this tentative agreement earlier this year on immigration. He is more comfortable with them than he is with Ryan and McConnell, and that doesn't play well with the president's base, who see Chuck and Nancy as the representation of everything that they hate in Washington. So this was a way to say, yeah, I'm getting these guys together in a room, but I'm not really with Chuck and Nancy. I don't think the White House expected that the Democratic leaders would decide to not show up. And this is one of those moments where tweets have consequences, even if they are short-term consequences. The fact that the Democrats didn't show up does nothing now to put the government in better position to stay open on December 8th, which is rapidly approaching. We have no sign of how these sides are going to come together and keep the government open. So I don't think it was a particularly effective strategy if it was a base outreach strategy, because it does nothing to solve the actual problem here.
Right. Julie Pace repeating what all of our mothers and fathers told us growing up. Tweets have consequences. Casey Hunt, but how do you explain the love fest? Could you do the laser rock this morning?
Laser rock, sorry, yeah. Delayed one.
We're back.
And we're back.
So that's pretty good. I gotta tip my hat to the control room.
Who came up with that?
We went from a love fest with Chuck, Nancy, and Don to these tweets. Is this, what was he doing here? Was this a reaction to, trying to appease Steve Bannon and appease the Bannon wing of the party?
I think that both sides here are dealing with bases that want nobody to be talking to each other. Basically, for Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they learned when they went into the last time they made a deal with the president, they learned what Republicans had spent the earlier part of this year learning, which is that a lot of times the president will say one thing and, blow it up a few weeks later with a tweet or something insulting, and then you have to go back to the drawing board. They went in, they made the deal with the president on immigration. There was a lot of fanfare around it. And at the end of the day, the president pulled the rug out from under them. And this time they said, forget it. And that's partly because they're under pressure from liberals in the Democratic Party not to be seen working with the president. And I think for the president, same thing. I think my favorite part of the whole photo op yesterday were Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan sitting on the ends of that table, both looking not so entirely comfortable in that video, kind of shifting in their seats. I mean, they know that at the end of the day, they're going to need Chuck Schumer if they want to keep the government open.
I don't know.
I think
if you look at this picture, Paul Ryan looks really happy in all of these pictures.
He looks thrilled. He gave a little civics lesson when a bill becomes a law. But, you know, to make a bill a law, in this case, they do need Democrats. And McConnell and Ryan know that. So they're, and so does Chuck Schumer, quite frankly. He knows he has
they know
leverage.
that because when you're trying to raise the debt ceiling, you always have yahoos like me that are going to vote against it no matter what. So what, maybe there are 20, 30 Republicans that you just knock off his nose immediately. So they do need Democrats here. And it seems to me that Donald Trump, by a stupid tweet yesterday morning, has made his life so much more complicated between now and the end of the year. Because the Democrats aren't going to come back to the table. They're not going to give him a vote. And the Republicans have enough votes to pass these things. But there are about 20 Republicans that can't go back home and say, yes, I voted to increase the national debt by $1.5 to $2 trillion with a reckless tax cut that doesn't help you but helps my donors, and I increased the debt ceiling in the process.
So here's the
by the way, I would primary that person in a second in any district and tear them to shreds. Any conservative could.
To go back to the initial premise of this, the kind of the mockery of the notion of Trump as being a great deal maker, there's a fundamental reality here, and Casey was alluding to it a second ago, and this is the uncomfortable reality. The uncomfortable reality is that there need to be Democratic votes in order to keep the government going. There's the complicated politics that you just pointed to. There's also the thing that makes it really tricky, which is Republicans, as you also said, control both branches of government. So you're Trump and you're going into this thing, right? You know that the blame, if the whole thing falls apart, will be with Republicans in your party. But you need these Democratic votes. So Democrats already have a lot of leverage in that discussion, right? So if you start the negotiation, what you don't want to do is you don't want to give the Democrats more leverage. You don't want to make clear how much power they have and provoke them to essentially say, you know what, guys, we have all the power here in some sense because you're going to need our votes. But we also know that you're going to get blamed if we don't give you our votes. He basically just gave Democrats more leverage in a situation where they already have an uncomfortable amount of leverage from the Republican point of view. And I'll say one last thing, which is, the whole thing of how these meetings happen in Washington, we always decry kabuki theater, right? Right. There's a lot of kabuki, but there's a reason why kabuki happens, right? You have to have a certain kind of, you make these pretenses in order to get people in the room and then try to make things happen in these uncomfortable circumstances. Trump does not, he does something different. It's like he's playing roller derby rather than kabuki theater. He's a fraud just like everybody else, but he's a different kind of fraud. And his fraudulence turns out to blow up the whole thing.
It blows up. You know, Barack Obama, a critique that we had on this show for some time, was that he didn't care about optics. Right. Too often he seemed aloof, he seemed above it all. We went into that. That had its own challenges. Here's a guy that's in the complete opposite direction where he does care about optics, but they're destructive optics. And he makes his job so much more difficult, makes the Republican Party's job so much more difficult. And Willie, John talked about leverage. That is, you could go back and look at Donald Trump's quotes about what a great negotiator he is. And he always says, I always make sure I have the greatest leverage. He has just given the Democratic Party all the leverage in the world they need. If I'm Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, I just sit back and I watch the Republican Party feed on itself.
This was the entire rationale for his campaign, that he didn't know anything about politics. He's not a politician, but he doesn't really care about politics because he's going to come in and do deals the way he did deals at Trump Tower. He gets people in rooms. He makes things happen. He's going to close a deal in the Middle East. He's going to take care of North Korea. He can't even get the leadership of the United States Congress to a table because of his own actions, because of a tweet he sent out.
For a phony baloney meeting. And for a window dressing meeting.
But is anyone surprised at this? I mean, his entire life, he has been one thing, an individual contributor. It's just him. It's always about him. And now he's president of the United States, and this is a presidency weighted down by ignorance. Ignorance of the institution, ignorance of the responsibilities of a president, ignorance of the responsibilities of a president to the country and to the world.
The legislative process?
Of the legislative process, of the meaning of words and their impact on tweets.
Right. But Mike, you also look at the so-called deals that he used to make. Talk to the people that were in the wake of those deals, and they will tell you he didn't pay his bills.
Yeah.
He'd constantly sue somebody for no reason at all, just so he'd pay 60 cents on the dollar. Anybody you talk to that did business with him, they all had the same stories.
Yes.
He was just litigious. He would, of course, he declared bankruptcy. He stiffed bank. There's a reason why there's not a bank in America that would do business with him. There's a reason why, construction firms in New York stopped doing business with him, and it's because this is the sort of nonsense it always pull.
We have, again, on the eve of perhaps potential passage of the biggest tax bill since 31 years without any really public hearings. We're on the eve of that, and we have this apprentice-like stunt yesterday with the empty chairs. He's president of the United States. I mean, I assume at some point this morning we're going to get to the truly frightening story of the New York Times about what he thinks about the Access Hollywood tape and about the Obama birth certificate. Still.
Yeah, if Mika were here, she would say he's not well. But she's not here, so we'll just not hear that this morning. But Willie,
he's not well.
That boy ain't right. Well, he ain't right.
And we'll get to all this, but then last night he's talking again about Hillary Clinton's emails and invoking the deep state. The conspiracy idea that there's a shadow government.
So listen, there's something, and we got to tease because Alex is yelling in my ear and has been for 5 minutes, so we've got to tease. So Julie Pace, is there a belief that, because there's a lot of chatter that something big, a shoe must be about to drop, because Donald Trump usually seems to freak out and start spinning out of control like this, attacking CNN, attacking us, oh, by the way, good morning, Donald, attacking everybody in sight right before a shoe's about to drop. Drudge, a website he watches all the time, suggests a shoe's about to drop. Any word inside the White House what that might be?
Well, the shoe that they're all waiting to drop is Mike Flynn. And that last week over Thanksgiving, there was more fuel added to that fire when it became public that Flynn's legal team is no longer talking to the White House legal team about the Russia investigations. Ever since Manafort and Gates and Papadopoulos were indicted, this has been the fear in this White House, because Mike Flynn is someone who crosses over the three really crucial periods of time for this president: the campaign as it relates to the Russia investigation, the campaign, the transition, and those early days in the administration. So whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know about Flynn, but that is the fear inside the White House right now.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, still ahead this morning. The North Korean nuclear threat just got more dire after a new missile test shows the entire continental U.S. could be within Pyongyang's reach. Plus, as Mike mentioned, reports that the president is drifting back to his own version of reality, reportedly now telling people that the infamous Access Hollywood tape is not real, not his voice, and again questioning the authenticity of Barack Obama's birth certificate. We'll talk about the significance of that. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.